Hello and welcome. You're watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. Let's start with the latest developments. Russian invasion in Ukraine will get a firm response. The U.S. administration and its European allies are initiating a series of meetings aimed to show the Russian Federation that its aggressive actions will not be left unnoticed. This was stated by White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. Next week, a number of negotiations with participation of Russia. The first round of talks to be held on Monday in Geneva. Then the Russia-NATO Council's meeting will be held January 12th in Brussels. And the third meeting is planned to be held on January 13th in Vienna in the frameworks of the OSCE in Europe. And on Tuesday, the Ukraine-NATO Commission's meeting will be held in Brussels. To remind earlier, Russia demanded guarantees of Ukraine's non-admittance to the North Atlantic Alliance.
We're not responding to them point by point, and I don't expect we will in these negotiations because, in our experience, you don't make actual progress by negotiating in public, and also because many of the proposals don't merit such a response. But Russia is very familiar with our positions, which are grounded in the fundamental principles of European security they once agreed to, including that borders cannot be redrawn by force, and countries have the sovereign right to determine with whom they associate.
Russia's actions towards Ukraine is a challenge for peace and stability in Europe. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said this after negotiations with Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, in Washington, D.C. The minister underlined that any attempt of Russian aggression against Ukraine's sovereignty will cause serious consequences. The parties have also discussed the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. The U.S. Secretary of State stressed that the D.C. and Berlin are ready to jointly work to prevent Moscow from using the energy resources to put pressure on other states.
This pipeline does not have gas flowing through it at present. And if Russia renews its aggression toward Ukraine, it would certainly be difficult to see gas flowing through it in the future. So some may see Nord Stream 2 as leverage that Russia can use against Europe. In fact, it's leverage for Europe to use against Russia.
NATO has a clear understanding of the situation in Ukraine and does not underestimate Russia's actions. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas stated this. According to her, several member states of the alliance and the EU admitted that they have underestimated the situation when Russia occupied the Crimea. But it won't happen again, they said, and everyone is, quote, really worried. Kallas also noted neither NATO nor the West are negotiating with Russia. It goes only about dialogue to maintain diplomatic communication, and the decision of Estonia to supply the Ukrainian troops with artillery and missile systems is connected with the issue of defense, which, according to the Prime Minister, begins on the borders of Russia and Ukraine. If we can help Ukraine, we should do it. Otherwise than just talking, we have been providing assistance to Ukraine earlier, and we will continue doing it. I think it corresponds to our security interests. Russia's tactics of conducting negotiations is the following. First, they are creating a problem, and then they are heroically offering to solve it. We cannot agree with that if they have made a step towards dictatorship. There is no reason to think that they can make a step back. We cannot allow them act in this space. Russia has to de-escalate tensions and fulfill its commitments under the Minsk agreements. This was stated by the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, in Stolnitsa Luhanska in eastern Ukraine, where he came in the frameworks of his visit to Ukraine. The politician went to Donbas to see the situation in the region and along the contact line, in particular with his own eyes. Our correspondents will tell you more details.
Houses destroyed by shelling and anxious locals. EU High Representative Josep Borrell has come to eastern Ukraine for the first time and saw the outcomes of Russian aggression.
The geopolitical landscape is changing very quickly, and the conflict on the borders of Ukraine is also on the verge of getting deeper. And in the next days, we are going to have Council of Foreign Affairs and Defense Ministers of the European Union, and conversations between Russia, US, NATO are going to start. So this is a critical moment. It's not just US and Russia. If we want to talk about security in Europe, the Europeans has to be part of the table. And the agenda of the meetings is not just the issue that Russia has put on the table. There are other issues on the agenda, many of them affecting Ukraine.
European Union top diplomat visited the Stanitsa Luhanska checkpoint, which is operating on a daily basis, and got acquainted with the general situation along the contact line. The Ukrainian side showed him the Administrative Services Provision Center located at the checkpoint.
I'm glad that we are meeting here in the Administrative Services Center, which has been created for citizens and modernized due to the European Union's assistance. This is just a small part of assistance provided by the EU to support Ukrainian reform in the sphere of administrative services provision. And I'm also glad that Mr. Borrell was able to see with his own eyes the disastrous consequences of the conflict, as well as efforts Ukraine pays to stop this war.
Experts are sure that Borrell's visit to Donbas is a sign of EU support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Besides, they note this visit will help improve communication between Ukraine and the West.
We have to admit that Russia is thoroughly getting ready for the invasion, and we have to get the guarantees from the EU and NATO. That is, ask them what will they do to deter Russian, not just on paper but in fact, and do it effectively in order for Russia to think, does it really need it? Does it need the consequences like this?
Experts also underline that Josep Borrell's visit is of particular importance, especially given the Ukraine-NATO Commission's and Russia-NATO Council's meetings to be held soon in January.
After the visit, Mr. Borrell is going to communicate with other EU High Representatives in the frameworks of the bloc itself, the European Parliament and others, and his role in the issue of search for diplomatic means to resolve this conflict is extremely significant. And I'm talking now about the European dimension. I'm not talking about transatlantic NATO-related dimension. Those are also extremely important to deter the Russian aggression. This proves the European unity.
Josep Borrell is also going to conduct a number of meetings in Kyiv to raise the issues of Ukraine's security and EU support against the backdrop of Russian threat. Reported by Vadim Kramer, Vlada Tsurkan and Anastasia Volkova, UATV News.
Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine discussed the situation on the Ukrainian-Russian border with the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia, Karen Donfried. According to Andriy Yermak, the relations between Ukraine and the United States entered the new level. He said that both countries remain in touch permanently, and it is a sign of real partnership. No flights to Kazakhstan. 3 airports are closed there in Almaty, Aktau and Oktober. Local media reported that employees of the Almaty airport have left their workplaces. Meanwhile, there are passengers at the Boryspil airport who still hope to leave to Kazakhstan. Yesterday's flight to Almaty was postponed for today, January 6, but it was also cancelled. Besides, according to air carriers, flights to the capital of Kazakhstan, Nur-Sultan, will most likely be cancelled as well. Russia blocks coal supplies from Kazakhstan to Ukraine. Due to the actions of Moscow, fuel is not delivered despite the contract signed. This was stated by Minister of Energy of Ukraine, Herman Galushenko. However, he noted that the volumes of coal supplies by sea are increasing.
There is a contract concluded by the Centrenergo company for the supply of 660,000 tons of Kazakhstani coal during the heating period in winter. But unfortunately, due to the actions of the Russian Federation, the transit of this coal through its territory is blocked. At present, neither the ministry nor the Centrenergo see the opportunity to receive this coal.
Almost 28,000 fires occurred in residential buildings in Ukraine in 2021. Half of fires were caused by careless smoking. This data was provided today by the State Emergencies Service. They also reminded that one should not forget about the fire safety rules during the winter holidays and mass events on Christmas.
Many people are going to visit churches to celebrate Christmas. While churches are places of certain fire danger, therefore I urge all the priests to conduct additional trainings with clergy and check the smoke detectors and fire alarm systems functionality.
The Firefighting Museum is being prepared for opening in the city of Kharkiv. The exposition is located next to the building of the oldest fire tower, built almost 200 years ago, but it is still working. Watch more details about museum's collection and the following report. The fire service in Kharkiv was established in 1823. The first fire brigades left from here. One of these three Kharkiv brigades was formed right in this building as well. Here is a watchtower, with the help of which they monitored the situation and, in case of fire, transferred information to the fire crew.
The tower is 32 meters high. Now it is an architectural monument and the oldest operating fire station in Ukraine. Its chief, Alexander Shenshin, says that for 200 years of its existence, practically nothing has changed in the daily routine of the unit. There are also rescuers on duty. Only instead of a watchman, there is a mannequin at the top of the tower.
At that time, there was about the same number of personnel as now, 50 people. Earlier, there was 3 horse-drawn carriages. Then they were replaced with 2 fire and rescue vehicles.
Next to the fire station stands the building of the future museum. Several halls of the exposition are located in the basement. There, the firefighters lived with their families. They kept their equipment and arranged their lives.
Well, for example, here is such a tool, a hammer. They say it was also used to enter a closed room or break some kind of masonry, for example.
2 centuries ago, 45,000 Russian Empire's rubles were allocated for the maintenance of fire brigades in the Kharkiv province. A lot of money at that time. There were funds even for the purchase of musical instruments.
When there were parades, the fire department went out and competed among themselves in playing music.
The highlight of the exhibition is an advanced 2-horse carriage containing a metal barrel and a hand pump. This was served by a combat crew, which included a pipe worker, his assistants, and a coachman.
This is a signalman. That is, when a fire train was on the way, he made noise with this bugle so that no one would get run over by horses, and rang a bell so that it was loud.
Besides, in the charters of firefighting crews dating from the 18th century, Igor Yurkov found the answer to the question of why all firefighters of that time had a mustache and a beard.
The tips of the moustache were pushed into one's nostrils, and these prevented burnt smoke and fire from entering the nasal cavity.
Firefighter Serhiy Rodimov has been working in the rescue service for 35 years. For all this time, he has been collecting exhibits for his home collection. When he learned that they were planning to open a firefighting museum in Kharkiv, the man decided to transfer the collection there.
There is no future without history, and everyone who enters the fire brigade or the emergencies service, everyone should be brought here, I think, so that they know the history of their region, country, city, the most important, the history of the organization where they work.
They want to time the opening of the museum to the bicentennial anniversary of the creation of a fire service in Kharkiv. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Natalia Belkudria, UATV News.
That was our final story today. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter pages. Stay safe and take care of yourselves.